is everyone tonight? My name is Carrie Bliss. I'm the chairwoman of Women United, and I'm so pleased to welcome you tonight to our speaker series on human trafficking in Northeast Ohio. When we begin the program tonight, I just want you to all feel comfortable, continue eating those wonderful sandwiches, and relax and listen to the program. We feel so fortunate to be able to bring tonight's presentation to the forefront of our community, and we're lucky to have passionate advocates that include our keynote speaker, moderator, and 7 outstanding panelists that are experts in their field to offer insight on this critical topic. I know it's a very difficult topic, but honestly, it's quite sad that these conversations are even necessary, but I'm ever so proud of each one of you for taking time out of your busy day to come and listen and come here to learn. And I want to personally thank each one of you for attending tonight, so thank you. And speaking of thank yous, we need to put out a special thank you to Lake Tran for tonight's generous sponsorship, and they are the ones that made this possible this evening. So thank you so much to Lake Tran. And we also need to take a moment to thank Craig Heath, the superintendent of Menor City Schools, and also the staff here at Paradigm, for kindly hosting us in this beautiful facility. I mean, isn't Paradigm just beautiful? And the one interesting thing that we're doing tonight too is this facility has allowed us to offer a virtual option. So there are people that are watching this from the comfort of their own home tonight. So I think that's terrific. So thank you, Craig, and thank you to the folks at Paradigm. And lastly, we need to thank the brains behind the operation. We need to thank the Women United committee chairwoman, Robin Baum, who led the charge in getting this done. Thank you, Robin. And we need to give a thank you to her committee mates, Jane Steger, Julie Ramos, and Lisa Imandi. They made such a wonderful team in putting this together. And they're also, just for your information, members of Women United. And Women United, if you're not familiar, is an affinity group of the United Way of Lake County. So before moving on, I will share a little bit about what Women United does, but I want to introduce to you and welcome to the podium the CEO of the United Way of Lake County, CEO and President of United Way of Lake County, Dion Dimitro, and she's going to share a few words with you.
Good evening, everybody. Certainly do want to say thank you for attending. This by far is our most well-attended speaker series that we've ever had. And I think that speaks to the importance of this topic. I also want to take a moment to thank the staff who've also been a pivotal part of making sure that this evening's event goes off without a hitch. I don't want to steal Carrie's thunder by any means when she talks about Women United. We have 2 affinity groups, Women United and Emerging Leaders, which are the volunteers and the backbone of the work that we do here at United Way. For those of you that aren't familiar with us at United Way of Lake County, our areas of focus are financial instability, access to healthcare, and education. And as we all understand, it's a very complicated Venn diagram. And us being able to bring people together, not just to raise funds, which is, I think, how people think about United Way, but to bring people together for an opportunity like this evening to learn more, to be able to help improve lives in Lake County and help to play our part individually is incredibly important to us. So I thank you for being here. Part of what we also want to be able to do is help connect you with resources and help you connect your resources to those organizations that you would like to assist. So we certainly thank you for bringing your donations to Forbes House this evening. I'm already aware of a fairly large donation that was made to Forbes House this evening, so thank you on behalf of United Way and Forbes House to the individual who took the time to do that this evening. But I just wanted to quickly share, today I had the opportunity to be in the Painesville City Schools for Career Day, which is one of my favorite things because I get to talk to little people and I'm not asking anybody for money. And what was fantastic about it was, first off, one of the kids asked me, what is my job? Like, what do I do? And I said, my job is to raise as much money as possible to help as many people as possible. So that's a really easy way to boil that down. And so, tonight, while it not being a fundraising type of event, we've shared some information with you on your table about things that are coming up that include our Winterfest and ways that you can help us. So certainly encourage you to take a look at that. But the other question that I had that was very timely, so Career Day in Painesville City Schools, I was speaking to fourth graders. And I had a little girl ask me when I opened it up for questions, if we ever pay to help people that have been hurt or people that have been abused. That's a highly specific question for a fourth grader. And when I said, as a matter of fact, we pay money to help the only emergency shelter in Lake County for people who aren't safe at home, and that place is called Forbes House. And she said, I know Forbes House. And so that's why we're here this evening. We don't want fourth graders to know Forbes House. We don't want anybody to have to know Forbes House. But until we live in a situation where that's the case, nights like tonight are incredibly important. So I thank you for being here, and I thank you for the part that you'll play in helping us to improve lives in Lake County. Thanks.
Well, thanks, Dion. So well said. It's just incredible. So we talked a little bit about Women United, and I just want to give you kind of a little brief something on Women United. The concept of Women United is based on the recognition of women as a powerful philanthropic force. Our purpose is to positively impact the lives of Lake County's women and children in need, and we do it through giving, advocating, and volunteering. So to that end, and actually Dion spoke about it, the donations that were here tonight are going to benefit Forbes House, and Forbes House is Lake County's only domestic violence shelter. And it seems really appropriate that the donations go to Forbes House tonight because October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And so one of the items that are really in need at Forbes House are Lake Tran bus passes, just to get the moms or get folks around town. So if you were unable to bring a donation tonight or you wish to give, you can secure bus passes over at the Lake Tran table at the back of the room later this evening, and I would encourage you to do that if that's possible. So Kathy Strankar, as Dion said, is the executive director of Forbes House, and I know she's going to be one of our panelists tonight, so you really get to hear from her. And I think that she would agree that she's so grateful for all of the donations tonight. So Kathy, I'm not sure where you are in the room right now. There you are. So I'm speaking on your behalf. I'm sure you're okay with that, right? So let me just give you, just in a nutshell, what Women United does. We host networking socials. We host speaker series like this one tonight. We volunteer our time. We volunteer our talent in the community in volunteer projects, and we also raise money to award grants. Over the last 9 years, Women United has proudly awarded grants to the tune of $422,000 to agencies and organizations that positively impact the lives of women and children in need in Lake County. This past year, we raised just a shade under $100,000 that we've injected into the community, and it's something that we are so proud of. I mean, we worked very hard to achieve that goal. And just to give you an example of where some of this money is going, it goes to Forbes House. It goes to the Cleveland Rape Crisis Center. The money does stay here in Lake County. It goes to Birthright's baby formula program. It goes to Lifeline's Dolly Parton Imagination Library. So just to give you an idea of where the funding goes. And all of this is made possible by our signature fundraiser. It's called Women's Winterfest and Holiday Food Tasting Program. I know a number of you in the room are familiar with it. It's our largest fundraiser. And Winterfest, it's actually right around the corner. It's going to be on November 21st. We're going to have it at La Malfa here in Mentor on the 21st. And it's easily one of the most anticipated holiday girl get-togethers of the season. So on your table, there is information on Winterfest. So rally your family, your friends who you think might be interested in it. But I'm going to caution you, you need to act quickly because this event sells out year after year. And then I do want to pitch Women United because we're always looking for new members of Women United that are passionate about giving back to the community. So there's also information on your tables on how you can join the organization, and I would encourage you to look at that. If you have any questions, certainly I'll be available to answer any questions you might have. So now let's get on to the topic at hand. It's my pleasure to introduce tonight's moderator, Carolyn Kinkoff. Carolyn is a human trafficking survivor parent. She's an advocate. She's the co-founder of the Alliance Against Human Trafficking. Carolyn will share a bit about herself and her work before introducing tonight's keynote speaker. So please help me give a warm welcome to Carolyn.
Thank you, Carrie. First, a quick announcement. For those joining us virtually who need a certificate of attendance, please listen for the code word and instructions at the end of this presentation. So as you heard, this is hard for me, sorry, always is. I am the co-founder of the Alliance Against Human Trafficking, and I know several of you here. It's really important for us to all work together as a multidisciplinary team because there are intersections with human trafficking, missing persons, domestic violence, sexual assault, abuse, and forced criminality. It is impossible for me to tell you everything I'd like to share in a few short minutes. The reason I stand before you is because I stand on the shoulders of a giant, my daughter, Courtney. Because of her, the trajectory of my life and career changed when I found out she was a victim of human trafficking. She had a normal childhood and loving, supportive two-parent family her entire life. She went to private and public schools in Lake County and was college educated at the Cleveland Institute of Art on a partial scholarship. She was an amazingly talented artist. Despite her support system, Courtney still struggled with a series of bad relationships, which later made her more vulnerable for grooming by her traffickers. This included a domestic violence incident in Lake County with a college boyfriend, followed by an older boyfriend who provided drugs and told Courtney to work as a cam girl and stripper to help him pay the bills, even though she was already working with me part-time in a legal office. Courtney was hospitalized at the age of 23 in 2015. That is where she met the trafficker who continued to groom her, who compelled prostitution, and facilitated her trafficking victimization for the next several years, often gaslighting her so others would think she was mentally unstable. He assembled a photo album for Courtney and called himself Superman. He was a Romeo pimp who pretended to be Courtney's friend and protector, but instead inserted himself in her life every time she tried to leave him, was manipulative, later admitted to me that he provided drugs to her, was threatening and toxic. Every victim's story and every case is different. Some signs are subtle or misunderstood. For example, in May of 2016, there was an unexplained hotel stay here in Lake County when I called police for a well check because Courtney had gone missing overnight and her trafficker told me she was robbed. The reporting officer stated in his report that Courtney was fine and left her at the hotel, which was near our home. In June of 2018, Courtney again went missing overnight. Her trafficker sent text messages to me regarding how he compelled prostitution with a group of people and picked Courtney up with a 50-year-old man at a fast food restaurant in Cleveland. This occurred after a 2017 legal guardianship order had been granted, deeming Courtney incompetent here in Lake County. Something that is often misunderstood by law enforcement and healthcare providers is legal guardianship. Children and incompetent adults cannot consent. Therefore, they cannot prostitute themselves. There is no such thing as a child prostitute. The emergency department physician and social worker at the hospital nearby did not believe me when I told them that my daughter was drugged and being sold for drugs by her trafficker, despite the text messages shown to them and law enforcement. They did not separate me from my daughter to question her as they should have, nor provided the option for a visit from a forensic nurse despite my pleas. Instead, the emergency room doctor discharged Courtney, simply writing in the discharge instructions, "Don't do drugs." Unfortunately, diagnostic overshadowing and victim blaming were common when I advocated for Courtney because of her mental health diagnosis and recurring substance use issues. If only patrol officers could have recovered Courtney instead of her trafficker each time she went missing. Unfortunately, he always got to her first, was often present during police encounters, and was at every ED visit and admission until I realized his role in what human trafficking was and obtained a civil protection myself in 2020 against him. Traffickers exploit vulnerabilities. When Courtney was recovered in September of 2019, after being missing since June earlier that year, she shared details about the trafficker she met in Detroit, Michigan. He claimed he was her husband and demanded a daily quota for her to be permitted to sleep at their apartment instead of in alcoves in abandoned buildings. She was arrested upon her recovery because of a bench warrant that had been issued when she missed her mental health court date during the period she was reported missing. Courtney was incarcerated while her traffickers and buyers remained free. To this date, she is the only person as a victim who was jailed for the crimes. Nobody has ever served time for crimes against her or been charged. She did not identify as a victim because of the manipulation and trauma bonds created by her traffickers. When Courtney went missing again in April of 2020, there was a missed opportunity by law enforcement in Colorado who had been called to investigate why a young woman was sitting alone at a truck stop. Fortunately, she was successfully recovered months later in August of 2020 with cooperation between the Eastlake, Ohio Police Department, thanks to Chief Reich calling the judge and finding out how to treat Courtney as a juvenile with the guardianship, and Allen Park, Michigan Police Departments. Her father and I now had a plan. We had to figure this out ourselves. So we took her outside of our county to Cleveland Clinic Hillcrest Hospital for a forensic examination for the nurse to collect evidence that was submitted to the Northeast Ohio Human Trafficking Task Force. There is no case for Courtney at this time, but what I can tell you is that forensic nurses collect evidence, and they were able to collect DNA. And my hope is that someday the perpetrators who harmed my daughter will be charged criminally. And I wish I could go back in time and convince that emergency room doctor about my daughter's victimization when it first began, because we could have had evidence then to stop that cycle, to stop those perpetrators, instead of telling her to just not do drugs. After the second Michigan recovery, Courtney went missing from Lake County again in December of 2020. Cleveland PD reached out to Eastlake PD with a possible sighting. Imagine how busy Cleveland is. They called Eastlake to tell her they thought they had Courtney. Despite their valiant efforts, Courtney was not recovered until January of 2021 because her trafficker refused to open the door. Interestingly, Courtney was sent a letter from the Director of Security and Risk Management from a casino in New Orleans, Louisiana, sometime after she had already been recovered. Perhaps yet another missed opportunity. She walked out of the casino with a breakfast bar after leaving change on the counter that was not enough to cover the food that she needed because she was homeless and needed nourishment. And yet, instead of them approaching her and asking her, "Are you okay?" they banished her from the casino, sent a letter to our home address, while she was missing. Over time, Courtney's medical records included statements about sexual assault victimization, and she stated, quote, "Drug dealers hold me at gunpoint." No one ever questioned that. No one ever investigated. No one ever reported to law enforcement. This was not found until after she passed, by me, because I'm a paralegal and I requested her records. She was also fearful of community backlash and afraid to go to the hospital for treatment. She thought she would be in trouble because that's what traffickers told her. They preyed on her as a missing person, and they prey on vulnerable populations to foster that distrust of police and the medical community. Courtney went missing from a group home run by state mental hospital staff for the last time on November 9th in 2021. She had been groomed for years and was often lured away from her home and other residences. Courtney had still been seeking relationships and job opportunities in person, via social media, dating and messaging applications that she believed to be hopeful, and was often lured with false promises and manipulations. She was last seen by 3 law enforcement officers within 2 weeks of her death. She asked a homicide detective for money on Thursday with no interdiction and was found dead in an abandoned apartment in Cleveland by Monday, February 7th, 2022. This is not to blame medical providers, mental health providers, or law enforcement, because I will tell you, the person who will be speaking to you tonight and members of his team, the Northeast Ohio Regional Human Trafficking Task Force detectives, her father and I had all been desperately trying to find her. I received a call from the medical examiner's office investigative unit telling me news that no mother ever wants to hear. Courtney was taken from a family who loved and supported her. She had been groomed for years, was trafficked out of her residences here in Lake County, multiple group homes, several treatment centers, and a nursing home. After years of waiting for housing in hopes of gaining some independence, she had finally been approved for a voucher for her own apartment, but it was too late. I never gave up fighting for my daughter. Perhaps the story of her death will save someone else by inspiring each of you to avoid missed opportunities. You can make a difference. Before we move on, I would especially like to thank Jane Bryan for being here. Because of her team, we finally received the availability for 24/7 forensic nursing services through Cleveland Clinic Mentor Hospital. I would also like to thank the UH team for taking care of Courtney, because prior to their arrival here in Lake County, we did not have the forensic nursing services that we desperately need for our residents. And they also took care of Courtney when we sought forensic nursing services in Cuyahoga County when she went missing from a group home in East Cleveland. I look forward to hearing updates from all of you in the panel discussion. I will be sticking around at the end of this presentation if anybody would like to speak with me, has concerns, has questions. There isn't anything you can't ask me. This is very difficult for me, but it gives me an opportunity to turn my pain into passion, and I don't want this to happen to any other residents in Lake County, in Ohio, around the world, or to their families. Now that I have had the opportunity to share a bit about my passion with you, I am pleased to have the honor of introducing tonight's keynote speaker on behalf of Women United. Detective John Morgan is a dedicated 25-year veteran of the Cuyahoga County Sheriff's Department and Department of Homeland Security Investigations Task Force officer assigned to the Ohio Attorney General's Northeast Ohio Human Trafficking Task Force. Although he recently retired. Congratulations. I don't believe it. His complete bio, along with all of our panelists, can be found at each table. Please help me welcome Detective Morgan. Detective, the floor is yours.
Was that mine? Oh, sticky-fingered Louie over here trying to take my water. So good evening. I'm glad everybody is here. It's a pleasure to be here. It's an honor to be here to talk with you all. This is a little different for me. I like to kind of walk around and talk. I kind of feel better when I'm walking around, but I'm going to do my best. So what I'd first like to say is I'd like to thank everybody that came again. Thank the United Way for having us. And we are here tonight for, I think, what is I would consider a very, very wonderful cause. With that being said, as much as Carolyn has shared her story, which is a very tragic story, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how we tried to fix that from the law enforcement standpoint, I would first like to talk a little bit about how I started getting involved with this. So as you just heard, I retired October 1st after 25 years in law enforcement. 17 of those years were in human trafficking. And the irony of this whole thing was that I never really wanted to get into vice work. I never wanted to do narcotics. I never wanted to do prostitution. I never wanted to do any of that stuff. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I ended up finding my way. I was assigned to the Cleveland Police Homicide Unit for 2 years. And at the conclusion of that tour, I was asked if I wanted to go over to the FBI and start working with them. And I'd heard a lot of bad things, a lot of good things, mostly bad things about the FBI. It's like, oh, you don't want to do that. But I decided that I was going to do it. And I really went over to the FBI to start looking at the Amanda Berry, Gina DeJesus disappearance as a fresh set of eyes. And it kind of spiraled into something that would literally, I would finish my career doing, and that is human trafficking. And what really put me over the edge was in 2009, we at the FBI were approached by Madam. By a show of hands, is there anybody in this room that doesn't know what a madam is? Okay. We were approached by a madam who said that she was tired of men coming to her asking for younger and younger females. And with this, when she came to us with this, we offered her a proposition. Is there anybody in this room that has never seen The Sopranos? Okay. Do you know what a T3 is, or what we call a wiretap? A wiretap? Okay. Like Tony Soprano's house was always wiretapped, right? So what we did was we offered this woman a consensual wiretap. We gave her, at that time, was a dummy phone because the smartphones weren't out. And we asked her to do all of her business on this phone. And we wanted her to put feelers out that she was searching for underage girls and that she had people that were willing to put her into, or them into the adult sex industry, and that we were willing to pay money. So shortly after these feelers, this had been put out, she's gotten several calls. And what really did it for me was the day that Eric Tutstone called in 2009 and said that he wanted to meet with us. And we met him, and of course this was all filmed. So if you can imagine watching The Sopranos, you know how we do it at the FBI. Everything's recorded and everything is filmed. And he met us at a local Starbucks. In fact, it was the Starbucks in downtown Cleveland on West 6th Street, where he talked to us about purchasing a 16-year-old girl. Approximately 2 hours after the meeting had concluded, we had received another phone call from him saying he had the girl and he was ready to do the deal. So on this day, I did not wake up in the morning thinking that I was going to be purchasing a 16-year-old girl on that day. But on that day, we bought a 16-year-old runaway from Cleveland Heights for $300. We offered him $5,000, and he said, no, I really want, just give me $300. I want to get my minute phone turned into a contract phone, and then I'll make it up on the next girl. So obviously, we couldn't have that. So we arrested him, we recovered her, and during the debrief, during that recovery process, she explained to us how she met this person. She literally had gotten into an argument with her mother and was walking down the street crying, and this nice man came up and talked to her. And one thing led to another, and she said that she didn't realize what had happened till after she saw the money exchange hands, and then she realized she had been sold. So that made me, it really touched me, because I said, what is it that we're doing? I mean, it's 2009. How in the world can I purchase a 16-year-old girl for $300 in downtown Cleveland in 2009? So for me, that was the turning point. That was when I said, enough is enough, and I need to figure out what's going on and how we can eradicate this and how we can stop it. So myself, along with several others, dedicated a lot of our career in trying to figure that out. So how I want to bring this back to what happened with Carolyn and her daughter was that one thing I'm going to tell you is that there's a lot of people that don't know what they don't know, right? There are people out there who talk about they know human trafficking and they know this and they know that, but unless you've really worked it, worked the violation, put people in prison, dealt with victims firsthand, you really don't know what you're talking about. So what we've tried to do over the last several years in training law enforcement officers is we're trying to get them to rethink the whole philosophy behind talking with victims and identifying victims. For the longest time, I often asked myself, let's see, because when I was in homicide, I learned how to do use of deadly force investigations. I was the lead investigator for the Tamir Rice investigation for the sheriff's office, and I did several other use of deadly force investigations. And then it kind of occurred to me, it's like, well, wait a minute. If a law enforcement officer gets involved in what we now call a critical incident or a use of deadly force shooting or incident of that matter, before we are supposed to, we as law enforcement officers who are supposed to be trained to handle stressful situations, why is it that we get 3 days before we have to provide a statement after a critical incident and victims don't get that time? Why is it that law enforcement officers, when something traumatic happens to someone, we're Johnny on the spot, the first one to say, what happened, tell me what happened, and tell me now? That's because we have a lack of understanding what trauma does to the brain, right? We, as law enforcement officers, get 3 sleep cycles because it helps memory. It helps us better remember what happened. But if you are a victim of an aggravated robbery, somebody points a gun at your face, a law enforcement officer is going to come up to you and say, tell me what happened. What did the gun look like? What's this? What's that? You sometimes at that point can't even remember who you are, let alone trying to remember specific details about an incident that just happened. Why? Because your brain is protecting you, right? It's hiding this trauma. You've been through a traumatic situation and you need time to debrief. You need time to settle in and remember. So when I talk to law enforcement officers now, and even we've changed our tune when I was at the task force, now that I'm retired, but instead of showing up at the hospital when we get a call from any of these lovely people here at this table that we have a victim at the hospital, instead of going in there like gangbusters saying, okay, tell me what happened, what's going on, where were you, all these other things, the first thing we want to know is, are you okay? The second thing is, when was the last time you had food, right? And the next thing is, is there anybody else that's in a similar situation that needs to be recovered right now? And then that's it. If they want to talk to us, they want to talk to us. It's now time to turn them over to our victim advocate and let them get settled. I will come back and see you in a few days. We're just going to make sure that you're okay. Now, for a lot of police officers, this is really uncomfortable because you have a lot of bosses that are forcing, them to write reports and get all this information down as soon as humanly possible, right? They don't care about the victims. They obviously don't care about the case because they're failing to understand that if you don't have a good victim, you don't have a good case, right? All they care about is what they need and what they need now. And so we, as law enforcement officers, have to begin to overcome that and get a better understanding of how to talk to people. I cannot tell you how many times I've come into a room and I have a police officer literally standing over a victim trying to talk to them. I'm like, don't you realize that you are in a dominating position and that you are making people feel uncomfortable? How would you feel if you were in somebody's personal space, right? Or if they were in your personal space? So we're trying to get them to actually understand not only the fact that, listen, they've been through a traumatic event, but you also have to give them time to breathe. Even after those few days are up, we cannot act the same way that the traffickers act, right? When I come into a room now, or I'm walking in with a victim, I'm trying to get them, I've been trying to explain to them, hey, instead of saying you sit here, because that's what a trafficker would tell them to do, say, where would you like to sit? Relinquish some of that authority, some of that control to the victims. Let them, for the first time, have their way. Ask them, do you mind if I have a seat here? And talk about it in a way that is not demeaning, but more uplifting. And there's ways to do that, but law enforcement still struggles with that because people in law enforcement still don't get it and they still don't understand. Now that we're teaching human trafficking in police academies, we're starting to get a little bit better. Law enforcement officers that are coming, they're more victim-centered. But just like anything else, try to tell that to an old-timer, right, who's done it the old ways. And now you have some rookie recruit coming out trying to tell you how to handle your business when you've been doing this for 20 years. And now that we're starting to weed out some of the old guard, like myself, we're bringing in new people who get a better understanding on how to talk to victims. And I believe that, listen, I couldn't control what goes on at NGOs and in other places, but what I could control is how we did it. And we started changing our tactics when we saw the positive results. And the positive results are, victims began to trust us sooner, and they started to become more open about what had happened to them. And, having to go through and fight over what some person in uniform did to somebody 5 years ago because they called them out their name, a different name, or called them a whore, or whatever the case was. You have people that just because I may wear the same uniform doesn't necessarily mean that I'm that same guy. And so if we can now curtail what is going on the street and we can teach these people how to talk to people on the street, that will then transcend to once we come to the Detective Bureau and you'll know that we're actually trying to help you. So these are just some of the things that we're trying to do on the law enforcement's perspective to start building better relationships with our victims. Now, we also know that every time we recover a victim doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to get a good case out of it. We've also have literally reworked our supervisors' ideology on a successful prosecution, or sometimes a lack of a successful prosecution. Because to me, I would love to get every trafficker off the street. But where I count the victims that we've been able to remove from situations and put them on a better path to get back on track because they were sidetracked in some way, shape, or form, going down the wrong way, getting ready to run head on to another train. But now that we've got them back on track, that's how I measure success. And that's how we've started to get our supervisors to do the same exact thing. A success isn't always a successful prosecution. A success is, have we started someone back on their proper trail in their journey of life? So now that I was on my soapbox, now let's have a little fun. So I was talking to Jen back there. Smile, Jen. There you go. So I was told that there's been a lot of questions about what's been going on social media and in media itself. And so I wanted to share with everyone in the audience tonight about some of these rumors that you may have seen on the internet. Don't believe it. I'm sorry, did you hear me? Don't believe it. 17 years of human trafficking, I have never once seen someone get abducted or had a case where someone had been abducted by someone, you know, the windshield wiper was up when I came out in my car, and that means I'm a target. Or there's a white piece of paper on my windshield, somebody's targeting me. Or the bald white guy with the mustache in the work panel van stealing kids. It just is not true. It is not true. I've had a lot of cases, and when I mean I had a lot of cases, I've had a lot of cases, and not one of those cases has been anything like that. Who in this room has seen the movie Taken? Yeah, great movie, right? You turn it on, it's one of those movies you can't turn it off, right? You're like, oh, I'm stuck again. Although it's great, that never happens. Not in this country, not that I've seen, where people are waiting at the airport, plucking people as they come off, targeting two distinct females walking by themselves and getting in a cab, and then kidnapping them. Haven't seen it. What you have to understand is this, is that the media can sell you anything. I mean, I was watching TV, I was just joking with somebody about this earlier. I was watching TV last night, and all of a sudden, I saw all these drug commercials, and I thought I had restless leg syndrome because I saw so many commercials. I was like, holy smokes, I got to get that drug, right? You have to understand that marketing, people that do these marketing, they're very good, right? They tell us how to dress. They tell us what to wear, what not to wear, what watches to buy, what shoes to buy. What dishwashing liquid to buy, right? If you see a commercial enough, you get Dawn stuck in your head because the Dawn cleans the little ducklings and all that stuff, so you go out and buy Dawn. So what this does, though, is it takes me back to, I know there's people in this room that remember Starsky and Hutch. You remember that sitcom? Okay. That was considered, for me, the old black exploitation sitcoms and movies back in the 70s, right? But with that being said, there was a character in that show. You remember that character who was a pimp? Huggy Bear. You remember Huggy Bear? So just think about this. In every scene, Huggy Bear was either giving information to one of those two, Starsky or Hutch, and he was also had women that were under his employ because he was a pimp, right? And they looked like they were having fun, right? He's a funny guy, he's a great dude. The women that are supposed to be his prostitutes are having a ball. So what does that do to us who are watching TV? They're thinking that it's great. But I tell you right now, I can't remember, I don't know about you all, but when I was in elementary school, I don't remember anybody raising their hands saying that they wanted to grow up to be a prostitute, right? Not in my world. I don't know about you guys, but it wasn't me. I didn't see that. But my point being is that the TV shows and media shows us and tells us what to believe and what not to believe. We went from Starsky and Hutch to now Taken to now The Sound of Freedom, right? And what you all have to understand is that some of these movies, they say is a true story, but it's based on a true story. But you have to understand that in order to sell tickets, a lot of it is sensationalized. They have to get you excited about it to buy tickets, because listen, I don't know any executive who wants to send a message. They just want to make money, right? So what I'm saying to you is, do not fall for the things that you may see on television or social media, because typically it's not true. Anybody in here who believes everything they see on social media, I got a bridge to sell you in Brooklyn, it's pretty good, it might need a little repair, but it's fairly cheap. Honestly, don't fall for that. Know your facts. Know the fact that in Northeast Ohio, my old task force, that in our first year of existence, we recovered 130 victims of sex trafficking, 5 of which were from out of the country. And this was back in 2016, in our first year. Everybody's talking about there's all these things coming across the border, it's human trafficking, it's this. First of all, it's human smuggling, it's not human trafficking, and we have more of a domestic sex trafficking problem in this country than we do anything based on illegal immigrants. Every county in this state has a problem. There is not one county in my area of operation that I have not recovered a juvenile or an adult. I didn't grow up, but I lived 15 years in Rocky River. Anybody ever heard of it? I've recovered 3 girls out of Rocky River. 1 out of my development. She just graduated high school. She would walk to the street corner and a pimp would pick her up, take her, turn tricks, drop her back off, and she would walk home. And nobody knew the difference. Nobody knew what was going on. Our task force consists of a lot of agencies, a lot of them here in Lake County. We have detectives from the Willoughby Police Department. We have 2 detectives from the Lake County Sheriff's Office. We have detectives from the Ashtabula County Sheriff's Office and Ashtabula City Police Department as well. So anything that goes on here, you can always call the Northeast Ohio Human Trafficking Task Force, and they will send out people from your local area here with us assisting. On search warrants, on illicit massage businesses. The illicit massage businesses, by the way, are this fancy name for the Asian massage parlors that you might see. In fact, just across the street at those apartment complexes, I executed a search warrant earlier this year on a pimp's mother's house, where we ended up taking about $20,000 in cash out of her apartment just across the street from this school. Any place you can think of in your mind right now where there's a cluster of hotels, you have human trafficking going on. It doesn't matter the county. Lake County is not any different than Cuyahoga County or Summit County or Erie County or any of the other counties that we have human trafficking task forces assigned from the Organized Crime Commission. If you all did not know, there are 7 task forces under the Ohio Attorney General's Organized Crime Commission throughout the state of Ohio. And we are fortunate enough here in Northeast Ohio that we have what we have, because there's a lot of people out there, a lot of agencies who don't have the support. You know, people always complain about, oh my goodness, Ohio is ranked so far up. Oh my God, we have an issue. But nobody stops to think that maybe we have good reporting is because we have people who understand what is going on and that are trained to say, you know what, I see something happening, I see something that is not correct, and I'm going to make a phone call. So that's why our reporting is so high. It isn't because we have so many more victims than any other state, is that we are educated enough where we're reporting it. And the more we know, the better we can do. And so when, you know, this is one of the reasons why our task force went away from the National Human Trafficking Hotline. There were times where we were getting tips like 2 days late. So we implemented our own human trafficking hotline in Northeast Ohio. You just call Sheriff's Radio, 216-443-6085. I don't see anybody writing, 216-443-6085. We don't care if it's not trafficking. We care that you made the call, and we will go out. We will call you back. Usually in about 20 minutes from the time you make the phone call, the page gets, that phone call goes right to Sheriff's Radio, who then pages out everybody that's on the task force, and you will receive a call usually within 20 minutes from when you place the call to get more information from you. So again, don't be hesitant about calling. Don't worry about, oh, if it's not human trafficking, I'm going to get in trouble. That's not the case at all. I would much rather you call and it not be something, and we would just relay it to the local police department, than for you not to call and for it to be something, because you never know. We could already be working on an investigation, and your little piece of information might help change the tide of that investigation. So you never know. And that's why we take every phone call. Every phone call is recorded, it's documented, so we know who we can call back, and so we can get the proper information in case the dispatcher messed up in some way, shape, or form. Listen, this is something that's much bigger than me, it's much bigger than my department, it's much bigger than law enforcement. Law enforcement cannot do it by ourselves. We need everybody in this room and all of our NGO partners to help eradicate this. You know, there's a lot of people that work in different aspects, but we want to go after the traffickers. But again, like I said before, that's secondary. The first thing that we're most concerned about is removing these people, these victims, from this way of life and getting them back on track. And hopefully tonight, we can raise money and we can start helping victims get back on track. So again, I know a lot of people in this room. There's some people that I don't know. I worked with a lot of people in this room, and some of you I have not. The ones that know me know that I do not play around, and it's serious business. I will tell you that because of the young lady's help in the very back of the room with Harriet Tubman, we were able to secure the largest human trafficking conviction at the state in Elyria. The guy got 172.5 years to life. And the first place I encountered this victim was at Windsor Laurelwood. The doctor there called me, and I'd never met a survivor like this in my entire life. She knew the pimp's name, she knew the hotels she'd been at, she knew the other girls that were involved, she knew every aspect. My job was easy, just trying to compile everything when you have a victim like that. So that just goes to show, if you don't have a good victim, you don't have a good case. So with that being said, I think it's time for our panel. I'd like to thank you for being here, and please, if you have questions, don't be shy about it. I can't tell you how many times I leave, or I'm going to leave, and I'm like, oh, can I have a question? I have a question. If you have a question, somebody else has a similar question. This is your time to ask. Don't be bashful. Please ask. Thank you.
On behalf of Women United and everyone here tonight, I would like to thank Detective Morgan for shedding light on the complexities of human trafficking in our region. His perspective was both eye-opening and impactful. So I'm going to shorten our break to 5 minutes. If everybody could take a quick break, we're going to rejoin and have our panel, just because we're going a little bit longer. But I promise you, you're going to hear a story of hope after this. Thank you.
survivors of
Testing.
they think they're doing okay.
All right, if we can have everybody back to their seats, please. Thank you.
He keeps going from house to house, living with different women, and they keep kicking him out because he don't have his own place. And he has a car, and like I say, he has a job. I'm standing around 30 or something like that. But it's like, like that. Yeah, okay. All right. Don't have nowhere to go.
Does he recognize the problem?
Yes, he does.
First steps.
But from him not having nowhere to go, so like now, today is good.
Thank you, everyone. We're about to get started.
And so I really
And he
think
keeps
that-
picking people that are abusing him.
Yes.
Oh. Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Of course. Oh my gosh, Denise is on the opposite end.
Okay.
I look forward to talking to you again about it.
If I could have your attention, please.
I'm Denise. Nice to meet you.
How are you? I feel like we should have practiced. If it's already covered.
I'm just like a little kid.
Are we missing somebody? Who are we missing?
I'm like a little kid.
If Detective Morgan would like to join the panel, he is welcome to. There he is. All right. I am pleased to introduce tonight's panelists. You can find their full bios on your tables. And my apologies to one of our panelists, Jennifer Moreland. I promise you we'll share your information with everyone. In no particular order, I'd like to welcome them. Give a wave as I call your name. Annette Mango, Kathy Strankar, Jane Bryan, Kathy Hackett, Dr. Stephanie Gaines, Denise Robinson, and Jennifer Moreland. And you all met Detective John Morgan. So I only have 2 questions tonight since we have a short period of time and some great panelists here. By way of introduction, I'm going to start with Annette, and then we can just go straight down the line. The first question, it's going to stop at one point for Annette, but the rest of it may apply to, it's going to apply to the healthcare professionals. So for Annette, what is your role? How does it relate to services, resources for victims, survivors, and individuals at risk of exploitation, including human trafficking, victimization in Lake County? And before you answer, that same question is going to be for all of our panelists, and I'm happy to repeat it. What is your role, and how does it relate to services, resources for victims, survivors, and individuals at risk of exploitation, including human trafficking, victimization in Lake County? And for our healthcare panelists, if you would please, include whether patients are seen 24/7 in Lake County or if they must be transported, so our audience understands how it works. And since you've opened your doors, how many patients have you seen in Lake County, and are you advertising or marketing your forensic nursing services? So for Annette, tell us your story.
Wow, that's a long question. So let me try to make it a little short. First of all, like I said, my name is Annette, and I am a grateful, humble survivor. I have a substance abuse. Oh, you can't hear me? Can you hear me? Oh, and I thought I had a big mouth. I am humbled today to have all of you here with us today, and thank you for taking your time out after work and everything to come here. First of all, it's just so good to see everybody interested in this to try to help survivors, victims become survivors. I was victimized when I was 35 years old because of my substance abuse. I was victimized on the streets because of my substance abuse. It's been a long road, and it's still going on. I don't know how to explain it to you to let you know how much as a victim to become the survivor, how much we need your help. I was abused out there for my substance abuse by anybody who you can name, by other substance abuse people, by police, ambulance people, anybody who can name. I was raped, I was beaten, I was left for dead. I slept under bridges. I slept in houses where next thing you know, they would come in and it was dead bodies in there. We didn't know. I was cold, I was hungry. My first trafficker was a woman who took me in and told me that she would help me. But she took me in and sold me. And I didn't leave out that first place for 3 months. And I was bought by other people like me who didn't have anything, but they had the drug that I needed, that I thought that I needed at that time. And at that time, I was convinced that I was nothing. I wasn't anything. I wasn't meant to be nothing. The judges always told me that I was a menace to society. No one, when I tried to tell people that I didn't want to do this, that I tried to go to school, I didn't have no education. I tried to go to work, but I still needed the drug. They wouldn't send me to rehab. I think it was like I got arrested 6 times before they even sent me to rehab because they said all I was a prostitute. But I was trying to tell them that I had nowhere to live, nowhere to go. That's how I kept ending up in these same situations. But no one believed me. But first thing I do want to tell you and let you know is what we didn't know back then, we didn't know. So I hold no accountable to anyone who didn't know. And we just didn't know back then what human trafficking was. We heard about it, but we didn't know. But I do want to let you know that once we did find out about it, it was things being done. Like they had human trafficking courts. They had who actually respected us. I know respected me and finally asked me, how could they help me? I believe I went to rehab around 9 or 10 times. But leaving rehab, I had nowhere to go. And when I was in rehab and I would ask them, where am I going to live at? They always said, I just wanted to go back out there on the streets. I didn't want help because I wasn't serious enough about it. But going on to what did help me was that court, that human trafficking court. And once I went there, I graduated from there, and then I had the Renee Jones Empowerment Centers. Now here I'm starting to hear about people who's caring and people who's there, like people like yourselves, who we need desperately to help us survive and to get where we have to go. They helped me realize who I was. And the first man that actually treated me with some kind of dignity happened to be Detective John Morgan. And that's a coincidence that I'm actually sitting here with him, because all them years, he came, he said hi, he was nice, and he treated me like a lady, the lady that I knew I was, that I forgot about. And from there, I took advantage of everything that you had to offer. Like today, I still have 2 psychiatrists that helped me go on. I'm still growing. I had doctors and nurses take me under their wings and listen to me, to what I had to say after all these things started happening. I got help with my mental and everything, because a lot of times when they look at human trafficking, that's all they look at, but they don't realize that we have other problems. Except for drug abuse, once I did that,
I did go to AA, CA, and everything for a while, but I kept wondering, and everybody else, why it kept happening. Because no one addressed me, which I didn't know that I had that problem until I went to drug court, and we found out that I had more problems, and with the Renee Jones. From there, I got a speaker license. From there, a lot of different things happening. But one thing I want to tell you most of all, my greatest achievement was getting my GED, my diploma last year. Thanks. After all them years, that was something that I always wanted, but something always came up, you know. I was growing. I had to grow strong. I wanted to do more things. I wanted to put more things under my belt. I started speaking out and talking to anybody who would listen to me about what's going on to human trafficking victims and survivors. I speak the truth. I speak my own story, and I let them know. Anytime something comes up, I let them know. If you have any questions, I'm not afraid to answer you, and I will tell you the truth, because this is a hideous thing that's going on out there. Another thing I want to let you know is that I have met the most incredible people who care about me. I look at them self-centered. I think everybody cares about me because I have to worry about me, and that's what I learned. I live in Cleveland, but I work in Eastlake. And I am passionate about Eastlake. Just like I want to ask a question about the mayor. You know, who's going to be next mayor? At Eastlake. But yes, that's what happened. And somehow I end up here with these beautiful women and young men that are incredible, teaches me all the time. So in my mind, I'm a nurse, I'm a doctor, I'm everything, because I'm usually on the panels with one of these ladies and everything that helps me. Thank you for your listening.
And one title that Annette did not claim is professor. And the two other co-founders for the Alliance Against Human Trafficking are here, Kathy Gelnitz and Jenna Bing. And Kathy Gelnitz is a retired forensic nurse, and Annette has taught her so much that she calls her the professor. So, Jennifer, let's start with you. And do you want me to repeat the question? Are you good?
Okay, I have the question.
Okay. And so 5 minutes.
Okay. I have the question. I have the question, but I do work in 4 other counties. I am not in this county, but what I would like to speak to as a forensic nurse is the barriers that we have as forensic nurses when a victim of human trafficking comes in to see us. Sometimes when people come in that are being human trafficked, they're not even aware that they're being human trafficked. They might think that they're in the thick of a mental health crisis or the thick of addiction. They don't see themselves as victims of human trafficking. So even though I may see it and I might try to go through a little screening with them to discuss it, they're not there yet. And that's okay. That's okay. But all we can do really is plant that seed of kindness that all the emergency departments, we've got nurses and providers here that will give you a sandwich and a ginger ale, and I'll give you a warm blanket, and I'll sit and I'll listen to you, and you can tell me whatever you want to tell me. The community has wonderful resources, and we need more always. There's always a need for more and more. But as a forensic nurse, someone comes in and they might report being sexually assaulted, and we can provide the medical treatment for that. And then maybe they'll won't divulge being trafficked or be aware of their being trafficked, but maybe we can help them with a safety plan for just a safe place for the night for them. So there's so many layers and so many barriers to human trafficking. It's not just like a quick, easy, simple fix. But I work in 4 different counties, with my region, and I see trafficking victims in all the different counties. And even though the different counties are all a little different and the resources may vary, and some of the resources are the same and they're wonderful, The trafficking victims are all kind of the same. Sometimes they have addiction issues, sometimes they have mental health issues, but a lot of times they don't even realize they're being trafficked. That's all I want to say.
Thank you. Kathy?
Good evening, everybody, and I'm so thankful to be here today. So my role is a pediatric forensic program coordinator. I'm a SANE nurse, pediatrics. So, excuse me if I get emotional, but this is what I do every day, and I am so honored to be able to take care of children who have been sexually assaulted. So I'm from Rainbow Babies and Children's. Our program cares for children 0 to 17. Anybody under 17 who's been sexually assaulted and or human trafficked, sex trafficked, even labor trafficked, they do present to our main campus. We do not have the manpower to go to the outside hospitals like the UH and the clinic does, because again, did you hear, I'm a pediatric nurse. People have a hard time taking care of adults with this population, let alone a minor who has been trafficked. And I will say that our children are vulnerable because they're children. Maybe they are living in an environment that is with families that, parents that are abusive, they end up in foster care, in group homes. That makes them more vulnerable. Our children don't have the words to even say what's happening to them when they end up in my facility, whether they come in through John Morgan or maybe we identify them when in our emergency room. I think my role has been important because I did not learn about human trafficking when I became a SANE nurse back in 2010. It wasn't part of my training. I learned about it, realized what was going on, and we had to teach each other. We taught our entire emergency room ongoing training on human trafficking so that patients that are in our facility can be identified. In fact, because of that, we even have a missing person guidelines. When someone comes in for maybe a sexually transmitted infection, and it's legal for minors to be treated and released in every state in the country for a sexually transmitted infection without consulting or contacting the guardian. But multiple sexual or STIs, that's an indicator of being trafficked. And our kids don't even realize what's happening until they're so deep into this, they don't even have the words. I've had patients brought in by John. They were trafficked from all the way from California. And she said, oh, Miss Kathy, that's not happening to me. I was about to leave. No, she wasn't about to leave. She was being trafficked in North Olmsted. So what we do, taking care of children, we do have to transport to the main campus for a couple reasons. I don't have the manpower. People tend to stay in my program for 2-3 years. That's the average. Every once in a while, I have people that stay longer. But it's that secondary trauma. It's too hard to listen to those stories day in and day out. We go in and it's a child every single day. And so they do get transferred. We also have the state-of-the-art equipment to take care of them. We have colposcopes. The anatomy of children is very small, so these colposcopes magnify the anatomy so we can identify injuries and we can do the forensic exam, connect them to services, other community partner services, such as the Cleveland Rape Crisis Center and all the advocacies they need, and connect them to law enforcement, all of those things that they need. So that's basically what we do, and we do take care of patients from all surrounding communities. We have people transported all the time. We have funding that we can get them transferred back if they come to us and they don't have a ride back. We will take care of all of that for them. But so that's basically what I do. Again, I feel honored to be able to take care of the population that I do because it's so important, and I think we're all put in a place where we're supposed to be. So, thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. And you mentioned Cleveland Rape Crisis Center. Up until recently, I know that there has been a Cleveland Rape Crisis Center drop-in center here in Mentor. It may be by appointment, but if you look online and call them, they are right here in Lake County. Dr. Gaines, if you would please tell us in 5 minutes, very succinctly, your role, please.
Okay. All right. Well, first of all, I just want to say that I'm absolutely honored to be here tonight with all of these wonderful experts on this panel and to be sharing this evening with all of you. I think this has already been an absolutely incredible event, and the fact that each and every one of you guys are here spending your time with us to learn more about human trafficking means so much and really is going to make a difference for our community. My role, I'm an emergency medicine physician by training, and I've been doing that for about 15 years now. I'm board certified, and I work mostly at CMC, the main campus, as well as Portage Medical Center in Ravenna. And I work my shifts in the ER, but I also serve as the medical director for our adult forensic unit. And just to touch on a little bit about like our pediatric patients that need to be transferred, you know, any pediatric patient that presents to a community emergency department, a lot of times pediatric resources are limited, and it's pretty common for them to have to be transferred to like a pediatric hospital. And Kathy is an absolute angel for what she does for as long as she's been doing it, serving our youngest patients. And so that really is the standard of care for them to be transferred to Rainbow for our pediatric population. About 2 to 3 years ago now, our program became an endowed program. And so I've been fortunate to be appointed as the inaugural endowed chair for our Blair Dickey White Sexual Assault Survivor Program. And my role as the inaugural endowed chair is to really expand forensic services and make this a system-wide program for university hospitals. And so our forensic program at the adult main campus started back in 2010, but we've had a pretty robust program built up over the years, and now in the last 3 years have been expanding that to become a system-wide program, so covering our 13 emergency departments in the communities, which covers several different counties. And I provide the medical direction, developing our protocols, our clinical practice guidelines for the medical care that's provided to our patients. And how we've been providing coverage across our entire system is kind of regionalizing it. And so we have a Southeast region, which Jen Moreland is our SANE lead for that region. We have our Central region. We have our Lake region as well, which Nia Long is our Lake SANE lead for Lake Hospital, and she couldn't be here tonight because she is graduating with her master's in forensic nursing. But she is a full-time dedicated SANE lead for the Lake Hospital, and we have 2 PRN SANE nurses at Lake, and in the process of hiring a 3rd. And so the goal really is to be able to keep patients, you know, where they are, where they present, not having to transport them to different hospitals. And in the last year, we've really been building up the SANE forensic response at Lake Hospital.
Thank you, Dr. Gaines. So Jane, I'm going to preface this with Cleveland Clinic just joined Lake County July 11th of 2023. Yes. So I'm very curious to hear your numbers since you opened, but please speak whatever you'd like to talk about for 5 minutes.
So I'll start with the numbers. Since we opened our doors, we've seen 23 patients out of Menor Hospital within the year 2023 from when we opened. And this year to date, we've seen 38. So I do work with the Cleveland Clinic, and we cover 13 hospitals. I'm the assistant nurse manager of the East Side, so I cover Hillcrest and the hospitals that are all in the East Side of Cleveland, including Menor. So we will travel 24/7 to see the patients where they are, except for sadly if it's a pediatric patient, we do ask that they're transferred to one of our hubs, either Hillcrest, which would be the closest because Fairview would be likely too far. So within our hospital region, we care for patients that are victims of sexual assault, human trafficking, elder abuse, that's domestic violence, and strangulation. We know that a lot of times when we see our human trafficking patients, there's an overlap. They come in, they don't identify as being trafficked. And one of the things that I think is most important, the gaps in care, because we really don't have time to wait for advocacy centers to have room, or for instance, like for the advocate we only have a short amount of time when they're in the hospital, when we can capture that moment. So for instance, like John was talking about the 3 sleep cycles, that's gonna be really, really important with law enforcement, when they get that story. So, what we tell our patients is, things have changed. Because before, we'd have a kidnapping, victim, and the law enforcement, or even in medical professionals as well, would say, how do you not remember what just happened to you? This was so traumatic. If it really happened, you would remember every detail. That is just not true. We know that the brain goes into a defense mode, and they don't categorize memories the same as us. So I had a case out of UH because I worked with Denise Robinson for quite some time. She trained me, and I had a patient that told me she was being trafficked by the Zulus, and she was in a hysterical state, and she was not able to really communicate at that time. But she gave me some details. I was able to call the Human Trafficking Task Force, and they sent an FBI agent, and he knew exactly what to do. Sat with that patient, we got her, her necessities, but then the thing is we have to keep them safe in the interim. So that's what I mean about shelters, about advocacy centers, multidisciplinary approach, because that is what is most important when we are trying to save these people and give them the dignity they deserve. There's dignity and safety, and everybody deserves that. So that's our goal. And, just to also talk about, when John was talking about that movie Taken and all of these misconceptions we see on the internet, this is what it is. That might be a pedophile that comes to take your kid at Target or something like that, but it's not a trafficker. They go after the vulnerable, people that they groom, people that society sometimes could often forget. So that's the buildup of the community response is what I found to be most important. So with that being said, I'll pass it off to Detective Morgan.
So Detective Morgan isn't going to brag on himself, but I will. So because of his representation of the Northeast Ohio Human Trafficking Task Force and our esteemed representative from the Harriet Tubman movement way in the back there, they actually brought the Northeast Ohio Human Trafficking Task Force here to our Lake County Sheriff's Department and told them, you have a problem, you have to do something about it. And Sheriff Leon Bruno assigned 2 detectives to the task force because of that. So they won't brag about it, but that is on Facebook, and that's where I found it. So thank you both for your work in that. And next, I'd like to introduce Kathy Strankar to share her story for 5 minutes, please.
So as director of Forbes House, is this on? Lake County's only domestic violence shelter, we offer a continuum of comprehensive services and resources for survivors of intimate partner violence, domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking. Everything that we do is centered around safety. Like she said, safety is important. Everyone should have safety. Our shelter provides safe housing, legal advocacy, counseling, and supportive services for individuals who are recovering from the trauma of abuse or working to recover from the trauma of abuse and exploitation. Many times we are the first point of contact for those in crisis. We answered 1,600 crisis calls last year. We offer both residential and non-residential services and programs to protect and empower survivors. So what business does a little 7-bedroom shelter that served 584 individuals and sheltered 144 last year with a team of 12 full-time advocates in Lake County, Ohio, have with serving victims of human trafficking? Well, as you've heard repeatedly on this panel, rarely does a survivor ever walk through the door saying, I was human trafficked, I've been sex trafficked. They walk through the door identifying with the abuse, identifying with the trauma, the control, the coercion, the manipulation, and the isolation that they've experienced from their trafficker or abuser. Unless they're brought in to Forbes House by the task force or law enforcement due to a sting operation or something that's going on, it is evident that they're a victim of trafficking, and it does take them time. We provide the safety, the time, the space, the advocacy for them to realize what they had fallen victim to. The realization of being trafficked unfolds gradually as the abuser or trafficker uses the manipulation, the lies, the false promises that can take the victim a long time to process and to fully comprehend before they finally do. Survivors come to us initially seeking shelter or legal advocacy, a phone call from the hospital, and identifying with the domestic violence component of their experience, only to reveal later, after establishing trust, conversations with our advocates on staff, that they have been trafficked. That delay occurs because of the fear, stigma, trauma, and shame that's affiliated with trafficking, and even because it doesn't mirror their same experiences of what they think should happen in terms of it being an extreme circumstance, like you've heard people say a kidnapping or something greater than what we've been shown or taught through marketing, which doesn't align with their own experience, which was manipulation is what brought them there by someone that they trusted or someone that they may even have loved. It's important to understand what this looks like in shelter. So what does it look like? It shows up as a 29-year-old mom who was sold since she was 9 years old by her own mother. Now at Forbes House because a boyfriend has become her new trafficker, fearful that he would end up selling their daughter. So she fled. Another survivor, she didn't realize that she had been trafficked until she wrote it in her own journal, realizing it was her own words that mirrored back to her, reread during a therapeutic journaling session that she had in fact also been trafficked. Others don't discover it until more intensive danger assessments or conversations and trusting conversations occur with our advocates, that they realize that they are the victim of trafficking. The intersection between domestic violence, human trafficking, and sexual assault is profound. And what I really want everyone to walk away from this conversation today with is knowing that those things are so intertwined so tightly, and how important it is that we don't treat it in a silo, that it has to be, like she said, a multidisciplinary approach and a collaboration. Coordination and collaboration to care is key to provide the appropriate needs and supports for those who are experiencing human trafficking, sexual assault, and sexual violence and assault. Our ultimate goal is to create a network of support for victims of all types of abuse, no matter the classification.
Thank you, Kathy. Now, Denise Robinson I've known for quite some time, and I've bent her ear a lot. And Denise, I just want you to know how much I appreciate you, and I look forward to hearing you share what you do for the next 5 minutes, please.
Okay, I'm pulling up the rear, but I too am most appreciative to be here to share with you all. Can you hear me? Okay, good. To share with you not only who I am, what we do, and what we hope to achieve in the future with our partnerships through all of the people sitting at this panel and all of you. So a little bit about myself. I am the forensic coordinator of services for all of the programs at University Hospital. So that's all 14 emergency departments. And I'll just focus on Lake County because I think that's what you guys want to hear. So about, I think it was 2021, University Hospitals assumed the Lake Health Systems hospitals. So without boring you with all the details, integration of services is a huge thing and it doesn't happen overnight.
So I believe I was invited to another conference where we spoke on what we were doing, trying to integrate services. But I think the most important thing to take away from that is building a team of dedicated forensic nurses takes time. It takes a lot of energy, and it takes nurses that are already doing jobs full-time to then take on the extra, sometimes, unless they're PRN nurses, of then caring for victims of sexual violence. And I am happy to share with you all that we do have a dedicated lead who is a nurse that is there pretty much, I'd say 90% of the time, to provide care for patients who are victims of sexual violence. That was our first step. Our second step was to build a team. Now that's the most challenging, and that's where we're still doing the work. We are, if I had to guess, I'd say at 60% capacity. So when you ask me, do we transport? At this point, we do. In full transparency, sometimes we do. And it's not always because we got to take the patient to another level of care. Sometimes those injuries dictate, they're so severe that we do. And with our human trafficking population, Carolyn, all these people on the panel can tell you, it is a specialized exam. You need specialized caregivers who really know the needs of assault victims and human trafficking specifically, because as Kathy has just said, most of the victims that I have encountered, I'll call them survivors, they don't see themselves as being victims of anything. A lot of them will tell me, I'm doing it because I want to. So you repeat those words back. So you tell me that you're selling yourself, you're getting no money, the person is taking everything from you, and you are choosing to do that, and they look at you and say yes. I had to explain to one young lady, do you understand what coercion is? If I tell you that we need to live in the hotel, we got to pay the hotel fee, but we don't have any money, how are we gonna get the money? I need you to help me. Can you just help me? And that young lady says, okay, because I love you, I'll do it. And it's a very, like the Romeo cycle, where you're just trying to please, and you're doing it because you love this person. And I said, so are you choosing to do this though? If you wanted to not do it, could you choose not to? And the answer is no. But that's a long road to get from I'm doing it because I want to understanding it, I'm doing it because somebody else is asking me to do it. They're not forcing me to do it. They're not telling me in all instances. Some of them are different. I'm doing it because I love this person, and he told me to do it, and I'm gonna do it. We not only have to change the culture of that person in that situation, we have to change the culture of caregivers. The road to and Lake at the hospitals is, like Carolyn said, educating our physicians. Dr. Gaines does a fabulous job in changing physician culture to not only just see a person, if you see a person who comes in with 10 STD checks, something's wrong. Ask them why. If I give you, you have to get a shot. And most of these people hate shots. But you keep coming in getting that same shot. What happened? What's going on? Don't just look the other way and just fill out the paper and go ahead. We have to teach our nurses, pay attention. While we're in a computer age and we're sitting at computers doing this, we're not even looking at the person. Take a look. Look and see what's in front of you. So that's what we've been doing. The work continues. And I hope that the next time we're talking to you, we'll be up to maybe 85 to 90% full coverage. That's our goal, to not ever have to have a person leave from Lake County to go to Cuyahoga County. There may be reasons they do, but if they desire to stay and they can, that's our goal. So that's it.
Thank you.
So we have 16 minutes until we have our resource reception afterwards, and I encourage everybody to stay and visit with the vendors, talk with each other, ask the panelists questions if they're able to stay. I'd like to start with Annette again, and essentially, you have 2 minutes to tell the audience what you want them to know, some final thoughts or key takeaways when they leave this Women United speaker series to connect our community in order to stop human trafficking here in Lake County and in Northeast Ohio.
The first thing I would let you know is watch who you vote for in your community in Lake County, because as we do know, we do have a problem in Lake County with our council people and with who's going to be a mayor. That's the first thing I want to say. Next thing I want to say is next time you see someone on the street that you sit up there and you just think that they're a drug addict, they don't want no better for themselves, take the time to think that maybe something else is wrong with them. Maybe they're not doing the things that you think that they're doing because they want to do it. Hopefully when you leave this room, you'll start looking at people differently, because we don't know what's going on in someone else's life and how they're going through it. And maybe don't try to save them, because do not put yourself in harm. But if you see something, make that call. That call just for help or something. Just be more aware and watch out for your neighbors, your communities. Start taking care of your communities. We don't talk to each other no more. Our neighbors. New people move in and we say, oh, we're going to mind our own business. That is your business, because that's your community. Thank you.
Jennifer, we'll come back down here to you if you don't mind.
So I want to say thank you guys for listening and for being here and for being open-hearted and open-minded and listening to us. And that's how this all starts. This is how we end human trafficking, is the discussions, the hard discussions, the hard truths, listening to the stories, and the ambassadors that have experienced these things. And it's wonderful that you're here. And this is how it all starts. And thank you guys very, very much for just being here and being open-hearted. And again, it all starts with just, asking somebody, are you okay? Because who knows where that's going to go. Thanks.
Thank you, Jen. Go ahead, Kathy.
I just want to say thank you all for having me tonight, and I do want to say that please know that human trafficking is a complex health issue. It's not just a medical issue. It's not just a law enforcement issue. It is all of our issues, and it impacts patients long-term, short-term, long-term, for their entire life. Just because someone's recovered, just because we may have identified someone, doesn't mean, oh, we did such a great job. Now their road to recovery really begins. And I do want to finish by saying that human trafficking is also called trafficking in persons. It's a crime against human rights and harms the well-being of individuals and our community everywhere. By being here and learning the red flags and understanding what human trafficking is, one of you may be that lifeline to connect someone to another person so that you can respond appropriately, connect them to the people who now can continue what they need. And so this is such an important topic. I appreciate so much, and I love seeing all of you here. And the education, as Denise said, is ongoing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kathy. Dr. Gaines?
Okay, so I think we've heard the themes throughout the night of that, this can really happen to anyone. Courtney's story that Carolyn so bravely shared with all of us, these people are the unseen among us. Don't think that anyone is immune to becoming a victim. We know that, trafficking can happen. It spans across all different type of socioeconomic classes and races and genders and communities. So it really can happen to anyone. And I think one of the first steps that we can take as to ensure our community is as healthy as it can be is to just increase our awareness, educating ourselves, being at events like this, keeping our eyes open to what's going on in our communities and our neighborhoods. And then if you see something, and I think it's okay for me to say this because this is a Women's United event, but women have kind of the special intuition, spidey sense. If something doesn't feel right, it's okay to speak up and say something. That one opportunity of you saying something or asking someone if they're okay, is everything all right, might be that their only chance for someone to reach out and for them to get help. I just want to leave that with all of you guys, and this has really been an incredible night, so thank you for being here.
Thank you, Dr. Gaines. Jane?
I just want to thank you all for being here, and then also to just end it with talking a little bit about the value of a survivor getting a forensic exam. Regardless of the time frame of when the assault occurred, the documentation has a lot of value because there's no hearsay law with medical documentation. So we could go to court and speak on behalf of the patient, and it could help bolster a case to help with a plea deal or to help with that multidisciplinary approach. If the patient, or I say patient, if the survivor, the victim comes to us, we can, if they talk to us, regardless of what it is that they do want to talk about, it is admissible in court because there is a medical hearsay exemption. So there is value to, if you suspect that you have ever encountered someone that is a victim of human trafficking, to have them come to a hospital that has a forensic unit is so very important just for that very reason. And then I didn't mention before, but we do have a medical mobile unit. Actually, they're out on a stink tonight. And I don't...
With us.
Oh, yes, with him. So it's just, again, what we're doing is we're trying to meet patients where they are. And we think it's very, very important to have a detox bed. So Lutheran Hospital, we have a partnership with, because they are a Cleveland Clinic hospital, as one of the medical directors there will hold a bed for that evening for a victim in the event that they would need it. So just to end it with thanking everyone and just saying again, we can also document what occurred to them and not get that evidentiary value from swabbing the patient, which is what the sexual assault kit entails. But it also entails that documentation of the event or the series of events that have happened to them. And then you may think, like, how can a person not know they're trafficked? Or that might be like a confusing thought. But like I had an FBI agent explain it to me once. I mean, imagine being homeless, imagine being hungry, and then you meet this Romeo pimp. He says, I have a place for you to stay, I can feed you. Then they get you addicted to drugs. So you go from being starving, homeless, having a place to live, and being fed. And so he said, he actually described it to me as like $2, or maybe not even, 99 cents for a sandwich at McDonald's. They have like 30 women in this house, so rent is low, and they think, okay, now I'm protected because I have somewhere to live. But a way like I was trained to ask in screening is, do you keep all of the money that you earn? And so they may say, well, I'm doing this because I want to, because I get a trade-off, because I have somewhere to stay. I'm not hungry anymore. I'm protected. But kind of go into like a glimpse of, to try to bring it back to them to say, no, if you're doing something, you deserve to keep any amount of money that you make. So then at that point we say, you are being trafficked because you're exploited. So with that, I'll go ahead and pass it down.
Thank you, Jane. And one word that you mentioned that we can't cover everything tonight that we would like to. We've talked a lot about sex trafficking because of the panelists that we have. Labor trafficking is also a problem here in Lake County. And we have somebody here who is planning to open the first male shelter for human trafficking victims. I won't call him out, but if you stick around for the resource reception, he will be mingling within the crowd, and I'm sure a lot of you are going to be happy to meet him. But without further ado, Detective Morgan, what are your final thoughts for us, please?
My final thoughts. I don't know if you guys really want to hear this, but you're going to hear it anyway. You would think that Clevelanders would have figured it out by now, right? We had how many bad things happen to us, right? We had the guy, what was his name, that killed 11 people? Anthony Sowell. And then we had the person on the west side, Ariel Castro. And we still haven't figured it out because we still allow it to happen. People walk around with blinders on, right? Open up your eyes. I get calls all the time about what can I do? What can I do? Well, you know what? It's time. Everybody says, put me in, coach. Well, it's time for you to go in, and this is your time to do something, okay? So don't call me and say, hey, what can I do? You have an opportunity to do something tonight, okay? That's all I have to say. Thank you.
I just want to end with always remember that survivors, they need our compassion, not our judgment. And when you think about the vulnerable in our community, where are they? They're at Forbes House. They're at Project Hope. They're at Extended Housing. They are at-risk youth at Juvenile Hall. Those are all agencies that by default are on the front line of trafficking victims. Strengthening the resources for domestic violence and those other community partners always helps to strengthen the fight against human trafficking. So I just think it's important to remember that. And because domestic violence, human trafficking, and sexual assault are so tightly aligned and interconnected, we have to be. We have to be united. Collaboration is essential, and as this community, I wouldn't want to be anywhere else other than Lake County for the resources that are rich in this community. And I want to thank Women United, as well as the Detective Carolyn and all of the panelists and the resources that are around the room tonight for all of the work that you do regularly. Thanks.
And thank you, Kathy. She and I just attended an event together this week, and it was so nice to see a friendly face. I needed a hug, and I was happy to receive one. So it's nice to see you again. And last but certainly not least, Denise.
Well, I guess my final thought is, as everyone has said, a big thank you to all of you. You could have been doing anything else, you know, but you're here, and that speaks to what I have found. I'm from the Southeast side, that no matter which community I go to, people love their communities, and they really step up to make their communities. So being here is showing that you really care. But I would say, think about vulnerable people. I don't think we think about them as much. Our homeless youth, our youth that have aged out of the foster care system, that's a huge area of risk, because those kids, once they turn 18, they are turned loose. Now imagine each and every one of you. I know when I was 18, I couldn't put 2 and 2 together. So imagine being 18, afraid, no one, no family, no nothing. You're just like a sheep to wolves. Think about our mentally disabled. They're another population that once they turn 23, some of them are their own guardians. And I have seen some horror stories. So think about our vulnerable population. If there's anything, like they say something, do something. If you can, act. And if you see something that looks odd, you're at a hotel and you see something weird, a restaurant, you see something weird, say something. Say something to a law enforcement agency, because you could be saving a life. Thank you all. Thank you for having us.
All right, our panel session has come to a conclusion. Thank you to each of our panelists for sharing such important insights into your work. Your expertise and dedication are invaluable in raising awareness and driving change. If you need a certificate, for those of you attending here or online,
please email the code word survivor to Jen Smizer at jsmizer, that's S as in Sam, M as in Mary, Y, S as in Sam, ER, at uwlc.org. That's JSMYSER at uwlc.org. And one plug for the Alliance Against Human Trafficking. If anybody is interested in a human trafficking 101 session, we have volunteers who teach community members. Jenna, raise your hand. Kathy, raise your hand. See one of those esteemed volunteers, and they will give you more information, and they can speak specifically to the audience. As I mentioned, Kathy is a retired forensic nurse. I will now turn the floor back over to Carrie Bliss. Thank you.
Oh my goodness, how's everybody doing? So much wonderful information. So I want to thank you, Carolyn. Carolyn was so instrumental in helping us put this together. You just did such a tremendous job, so thank you so much. And I want to thank the panel on behalf of the United Way of Lake County and Women United. Detective Morgan, I know you're retired from law enforcement, but I'm so happy that you're still in the fight. It's so important, so thank you. And panelists, I just cannot say enough. Just thank you from the bottom of my heart for just sharing today with all of us. I think we all appreciate so much what they do for Lake County and what they do for the larger world. So again, thank you. So we don't need to rush out. We've got some resource tables at the back of the room. Please take your time, engage, network, talk, visit for a little bit. But for now, I want to thank you all for being here tonight, and I wish you all have a wonderful evening. So thank you.
Sometimes it just depends on, sharing your story.